Yeah, the session today was very so timely in a sense because I have played with these guys in the past, one time or another, and relevant to what George was saying to Greg Pilo, the drummer, regarding a summit kind of thing. That this is what you train for, this is what you work for. I think he's referring to a certain level of transcension. See, in terms of shifting consciousness awareness from the self to, let's say, the no self, in a sense. We call it the spiritual self, the spirit, which is, I think, comparable to what we're talking about. And so, yeah, I think all of my career has been in the, let's say, the comfort zone of having the knowledge of the spiritual self as part and parcel, and maybe having a greater part in what I do with a plus and minus cause and effect result, and also to bring music from that place at the same time. So it's a formlessness, but interestingly enough, from the formlessness of it, depending on how open the person is, it will use you. The spirit will use you. See, it can use you, can move you, can inspire you. See, to do forms of things that are true to you in a certain moment, depending on which side of the good or bad or negative or positive that you're on, to determine to what degree the music that it's giving you not only elevates you but other people. So it's actually for other people, through you, not just for you. It is true that it is that, but then it is speaking for itself. Then we're talking about the spirit speaking for itself relative to the particular situation. And so when George is complimenting Greg, I think he was really talking about Greg's ability to then be more transparent beyond his jazz function, which I think is wood for the fire. You know, your culture you bring is wood for the fire for spirit to use it as it needs to use it. I think that's what was happening. The concepts, the freedom, because I was talking to Greg, I started to make him feel comfortable to bring the inner out. See, despite skill sets and skill level, say no, the idea is to be moved so that what it is comes through you, and let it have its way with you. Let the fire have its way. See, let the inspiration have its way. And not very many people have experience with complete and total surrender to the fire, but I think that should be much more of a learning process and then a surrendering process, being open to it. Because what are you surrendering? You're surrendering your obstructions. You're surrendering maybe opinions about yourself that are not enabling or accessing, let's say, the divine in a manner of speaking, the divine, right? The joyousness of your own being, your own nature, and so on. And so it was a good moment that we had this afternoon. Yeah. So the process, in terms of an educational use of language, it says to go from form, right? And from form, I mean, in the beginning, you have a need as a child to learn forms so that you have a consciousness of it. So then we're operating from unconsciousness, becoming conscious to a certain degree relative to form. And so once those forms are mastered, then there's more unconsciousness that can come in, and let's say bordering on superconsciousness, that can use that form, as well as the individual can use that form. So then it's the individual working with, let's say, a deeper mode of consciousness or a higher mode of consciousness that enables them to feel they're cooperating with the genius. See? So they see it, it's there, and then you give it something, I call it wood for the fire. That would mean your culturing, your training, and then you want it to do something for you. See? You want it to show up as itself. See? That means the selfless or the spiritual self, higher creative self. So we're talking then about the unconscious to the conscious to the superconscious, to put a terminology on it. Okay? And that's true in music, that's true in art, that's true in life. We want the superconsciousness to be able to reveal its majesty and its divinity to us, so we always feel completely and perfectly connected to what it is, which is what we're here to do, is to be part and parcel of that process, let's say in terms of a sacred way of living our life on earth, being of service to other peeps, feeling peace, feeling beauty, feeling balance, feeling open creative intelligence, working through it as much as possible, so there's no need for any suffering. Right? There's just more understanding, deeper understanding. Okay? Yeah, there comes a time in the Creator the creator, so the person that is more or less resigned to being part of the creative process, when you can see it in terms of shifting from one mode, brain mode, to another brain mode. And I'd say for the benefit of discussion right now, I'm saying we move from the intellectual mode all the way over to the, let's say, the super intellectual mode or the creative mode. So we can say left and right brain, and then there's a neutral mode that I think has to be considered and weighed in the balance here. There's a neutral mode where it's happening of itself, which is beyond the knowledge and the being. See, in fact, it's so beyond it in order to be transcended, or to say that there's no language that can describe what it is when it happens. It's just light, right? Realizing itself as light. And I think for the purpose of addressing a musical audience, then it's sound, so realizing itself as sound. And then the sound is sound, then we do have to say, in the deepest context of the word, or esoterically speaking, is silence. The sound as silence. The sound is silence. That sound is a manifestation of silence by itself. So the sound is silence speaking of itself, for itself, to itself. Now, some of the pieces we played today are pretty standard pieces. They're earlier pieces. But because they're called earlier pieces doesn't mean that they are, let's say, less than what I'm playing now. They're just different forms of references for what I'm playing now. So, in other words, if we take a ballad that we did, a very, very simple ballad called Only If You Love, which is so simple. I mean, we're playing a melody that's basically on chords, a chord melody. Almost fundamental. But again, for the creative mind, the fundamental is in itself implying the infinite. See? And then we agree on doing it in, and I have to define that in terms of what I do, and then out, in terms of a more open approach that would be more expansive in a manner of speaking, see? Including dissonances and whatever else. We didn't get that far out with it, I don't think, today. So we stayed inside. But what I'm usually calling an out piece means more external in terms of worldly quality, not because from the inner mind, the super inner mind or the heart mind, there is no out. Everything is included in it. Everything's embraced, so it's not like out for other people who are more or less unfamiliar with the kind of distance between notes or the gaps or the dissonances, however, reflecting their lack of education or lack of intelligence or lack of enlightenment. See, so there's no ultimately out or in this case. But the in, I mean, is very, very deeply in. I mean, straight from the heart in that context, straight from the heart. Only If You Love is a simple ballad is straight from the heart in the simplicity. And you can play it any which way we want to. The thing is, Bernie hadn't played some of these things, and that's what I wanted to bring. Old tunes that he never got to play, that he's able to play, and bring a number of things to the table, like his jazz, because we're talking about classical structure to begin with, as you know, call it jazz, if not call it jazz. And so he felt very comfortable with another piece we played, which is Goodbye Dear Sweet Mother, okay? Which is a tune I wrote for my mother well before she passed. See, knowing that day was going to come, because I could feel the sadness already, and enjoying her so much, and living with her. Said, no, this is going to be a drag when she leaves. This is going to be heartbreak. But that doesn't mean because it's going to be heartbreak, it lacks majesty and dignity. See? And so with this, we're dignifying through music a person that truly deserved, and was all about dignity and dignifying peeps and dignifying herself, dignifying her children. But that's every mother. At the same time, I say it's personal, but it's really universal in that this is something that everybody must go through, depending on who and what they call their mother. Goodbye, dear sweet mother Earth. You can take it to a cosmic level. Goodbye, dear sweet mother Life. Right? Goodbye, dear sweet mother Death, which is another kind of mother. Right? Love is a mother. See, so it's very open. So if there's an interpretation that we need to put to some of these simple concepts, then say, yeah, you can go from the basic, the fundamental, to the universal, and everything in between. But the feeling of the connectedness is the same. See? We do feel we're connected. See, the mother is connected. In other words, the mother is a matrix of creation, the womb. And so that's one of the pieces we dealt with. Only If You Love is also, let's say, part of the spiritual understanding here. That only if you love, you're going to realize certain things. Only if you love are you going to realize what pain is about, what suffering is about, and what love is about. Only if you love, you're going to know, you're going to get you, let's say, come back to realizing what love is about. You have to love to love. It's like, if you want to want freedom, then you better be free. You have to have some kind of intuition of what original freedom is, so that you know what the free is. If you want happiness, that's one thing, but you got to be happy to have happiness. So it's not other than you, it's just opening to where it's reality to you. And so that's what I bring to the conversation of the musicians, which may be a little bit different from what they're used to, because I'm not fixed in and just, let's say, blinded by the music. Say, no, music's something we have to use. We're not here for it to master us. We need to be masters of that, so that where we're coming from, regardless of what level or style of music, it's coming from the deepest place possible, or the highest, most sacred place possible, the greatest place. So another piece we did was visiting this planet. Another similar theme. So when we came to this planet, like we're not the planet, in a sense. Visiting this planet implies before birth. Visiting this planet, then you're coming to birth. You're a spirit soul in the spirit world, and coming to a planet of your, let's say, not so much choosing, but has been somewhat determined in the psychic world, in the astral world, by some form of agreement, by karma, by laws. You may deserve it, you may not deserve it, but you're coming to a place that you need to be working on yourself on, in this case. So I'd say, by the same token, visiting this planet is like coming to purgatory, as well as coming to a chosen place or a qualified place of birth for most people. So we have to assume that as a principle and say reality, because when you're gone, where do you go? Right? So you're going back to space or spirit. That means of your deserving, because you came here not out of a complete vacuum. Let's say part of a progression, because in fact, we are the total. And as we evolve spiritually, you start to embrace much more, because your perception is expanding, of what we are as a total, even though we're in a finite body. We have to see that as a finite being, your heart is big enough to embrace the total. Yeah? Right? Because we're finite bodies, but our heart and the spirit is really universal. And so that's part of the progression. This is a lesson, a conversational lesson I try to give to the guys through the concepts of the music, and then by the demonstration of music as finite, and then dealing with structure, and respecting structure, and worshiping structure if we have to, mastering it, and then the freedom that has all to do with all of this music. That we are then free by nature, by original nature, as spirits, we're free to do what we have to do, and then we have to know what that is that we have to do. It has to be according to certain kind of laws of cause and effect. To respect that, same with the music, cause and effect. Say, listen, if you have a positive feeling about it, good feeling, that's why I said we have to go back to some original beauty, positive good feeling, then whatever you're playing is going to be in the context of that kind of, let's say, energy, source, say, vibration, resonance, see. And that's also very, very important about this music. As a person that cultivates peace, then even the out stuff is going to have some semblance of this kind of peace in it. See? Now, so those are a few of the tunes that we discussed, and that we did see, I think you might agree, some transformation there in the let's say, experience by different players. They were like waking up, so to speak, just coming to terms with, wow, this is not just music, this is a process, and the process is self-liberating, and coming to terms with what could be then called, as a result of self-liberation, some kind of heart contact, heart resonance, which is, I think, the ultimate purpose of music, is to create heart resonance. Not just by structure or by cultural forms, like, well, I'm going to play this because the people here have the culture of this kind of music, and they hear Latin, African, or whatever, which is not bad. But the idea is to reach even deeper to where we are the same thing. We are the one itself, and we know that. See, without, let's say, cultural media as such. You understand that? We did it happened automatically. We did a swing version of Gratitude. Okay, it's like standard blues but modified. It has a little bit of Coltrane-ish bridge to it, and so it was very, very easy for me. It was a very easy common denominator for everybody to get in on a groove. So as Greg, the drummer, was able to feel connected, and then simple enough tune for everybody to sort of go deep for a moment and recover from that, and feel like we accomplished a very simple composition, which is offered us the swing mode. So I'm happy we did that. And then we closed with Leaving This Planet, which is the third of the trilogy, Visiting This Planet. We didn't do the second movement. It's the first movement. We did that. Bernie played the third movement, Leaving This Planet, in a ballad form, solo, which I felt was very appropriate. It had somewhat of an ethereal kind of presence to it, and it's about ascending, going up in classical chordal progressions. Then we did not have a chance to play the second movement, which has to do with being on earth, being in purgatory, but every piece we do has something to do with that, but this is more specific to that, dealing with what we call, say, experience as a human being, see? And dealing with the suffering and the lessons that come with that. And of course, closing it off, we don't have a death fund, but we have leaving this planet in the form of dying into, let's say, peace, rather than anything else. So we're living to die into peace, see, into silence, into transcendence, see, into the infinite, as you know. So that covers those pieces. The compositional process for me is very, very simple. I get the melodies without thinking. They'll come to me, and I let them go, and I let them grow. I let them go to grow, so that these things are not easy for me to forget. See? A lot of things come to me. Rather than pinning it down, say, no, I'm just going to let it incubate somewhere in the astral field. Say, I heard that. Say, that's beautiful. It comes back to me. I've listened to it as much as I need to, because it's coming back in terms of a haunting. What I play are pieces that haunted me. So there's a haunting process that's a little bit different from other composition techniques that people will, let's say, write it out, and then you see it, and then you work from it, let's say. I don't have to do that. I have not done anything that way yet. See? So I don't have an intellectual approach to composition as such. Go write down, sketch it, and sketch chords, and progressions, maybe a couple of notes here and there. But that's about it. I have to be haunted by it, and then you see the melodies are haunting and the titles are haunting in a certain respect. Those are the ones that have stayed to haunt me, and then when I finally complete it and play it, it disappears. The idea is to get it to the table of, let's say, service relative to the peeps, sharing the vision with the peeps, and then the process is pretty much that. So it's not an intellectual process for me at all at this point. When Nancy experienced the loss of a horse, I mean, immediately I felt something. I went to the piano and there it was, immediately. No thought process. Just knew where the chords went. And it was about the feeling more than anything else. See? So I'm playing from an intuitive feeling sense of what it is, rather than an intellectual, mathematical process, which is just as valid, very important for other people. But for me, it's always simplicity, directness, and as I call it in my system in teaching, it's, heart, fire, sound. Heart, fire, sound. That's jazz, it's heart, fire. That's heart first, and then the fire in the heart that demands you go to an instrument and play it. That's this expression that comes out through your voice. And then heart, fire, sound, that means it's the sound, but the sound is not what we're hearing. It's the sound that enables a person to start hearing beyond what they hear, which is the important thing. So it's like going back to silence. And what you're left with after you hear the melody is just a strong sense of silence and peace. So there it is in a nutshell. Let's touch upon that, even though I haven't got a clue there, but yeah,
just vibe off it. Okay, we're rolling.
Yeah. This project's really about me coming up to play music for my friends in Canada. People who I love, people who have loved me in a certain way. This is giving something back to Canada, in a manner of speaking. Okay, when I came up here in the beginning, it was 1969, right? Straight out of let's say the Vietnam sort of thing. I did my service. I was in the Army Band. I worked my way to the Army Band, 440th U.S. General Army Band, and so I paid my dues to the band. It was a great, absolutely heavenly service to be in the Army Band. Okay, it wasn't about weaponry, it wasn't about warfare, it's about your acts and playing good music at that point. So, there's Juilliard and then there's the Army Band, because if you mess up, it's over. All right, so you got to do it right, and so it's very, very disciplined. And that's where I started to get the guitar together. So this is a very interesting, let's say, process in terms of what I wanted to share with you anyway. But now you asked me to respond to something, and now here we're back to a little reveal on being an Army bandsman, where it actually all began before I came up to Toronto. And then coming up to Toronto is where I found Paul Schaefer, ran into Sonny Greenwich, ran into all these great players, and Lenny Breau. I was very close to Lenny Breau, very close to Greenwich, and his family, and so Lenny Bro stayed with me, and there's like a real quintessential musical guitar genius, right? He's a monster. And, he called me a genius, which really funny, and I was offended. Lenny, what are you crazy? I don't know anything about the guitar. He said, no, where it's coming from in your case. He says, you may not know where it's coming from. He said, some of what you got comes from heaven. And then when he said that, I said, wow, a lot of people would think this guy is not deep. Lenny had his own depth and his own sweetness, his own spirituality, that because what he was doing in some ways, I said, people say, no, this guy is like, another crazy jazz musician. That is not true, He was, but he wasn't. He was a very simple, sweet, and very beautiful person. So that's part of, my coming back up here. I had very good experiences, and that's what this date is about, just trying to give the people back something and honor the Canadian, let's say, compatriots that I have in my life, all these good people, especially Bernie, especially the guys who played, especially them and their people. But I just find the goodness of Canada, I think not enough is said about that. The neutral approach that the Canadians are offering the world is very, very helpful. It's very sweet, so thank you. Now, I'm going to speak firstly as what I call a child prodigy. I didn't know my father was that much of a drummer, but I was born with drum fever, African drum fever, see? To the degree where, I had a connection with Mongo Santa Maria, had a certain kind of childhood connection with Baba Latunji. These guys are very, very powerful people, so I wanted to hear that music. That was like very, very important to me. That's on my father's side, African roots on my father's side. And so for me, there was, in the family I was born into, there's a lot of violence. Okay, not as much as other people. They weren't like shooting each other, but they were beating up on each other, arguing, normal violence because of booze. It's drinking. I'm not against these things, but it's not always a positive mix for people. And as a child, my salvation wasn't just going to church and becoming a Roman Catholic. My salvation was with my drums. My 5 drums were like my friends. That was my spiritual guidance was there. And so also on my father's side, there were the spiritualists who had, and they talked to me in those terms as well when I was a child. So I had this kind of like early life experience, having spiritual support and trying to find peace with the music, my music. So for young people, I'd say, what disconnected me from that was the accident when I was 5 years old, when I was pushed through a window. And then that stopped my wheel, and then I had to get back to it. So for young people, I want you to know that what you need to do is anytime you feel pain, you want to go to an instrument. Anytime you feel suffering and heavy, you want to see if you can go to a piano and try and make some sense out of that for yourself. And this is what I say to musicians. Listen, your suffering is given to you to do something with, not kill each other with, something to find some expression with. Whether it's painting or something, take that pain and use it as great artists do, as part of their transformational communication to the world. Say, no, you got to take that and make beauty out of ugliness, and that's what the art form is ultimately about. So for young people, love your suffering, be grateful for it, but not on the level of suffering to suffer. You got to be grateful you're given this pain and suffering to do something with, and that something with means your art form. Find yourself a beautiful art form, express it, share it with your people, and bring peace to yourself in the process. Yeah, we got contact from the Letterman show producer-director Jerry Foley. And what he did was he sent us a copy of a movie they put together. Paul Schaefer interviewed me, he and I talking, and then they played some of a date we did in 2003 at the Village Underground in New York City that Paul produced, which included Ravi Coltrane, Rashid Ali, Pharoah Sanders, Paul Schaefer, and Don Pate on bass, and myself leading the band, featuring 2 compositions, basically visiting this planet and leaving this planet with all these great players on it. And so I'm very happy that they did something with this and honoring the little bit that I do out here with such with these cats. That's very, very, very special, very, very spiritual. And these cats, what they play, it's hard to get more sincere and pure people to play any kind of music. So for them to be playing with me in this music, it's a great honor, and I'm really happy that Paul's doing it out of thanks to me for the help that I've given him over the years. So that's a project which is right now in the making, on the verge of being turned over to us for release very, very soon. It's about a 47-minute video that show on that.
Okay, roll.
Yeah, this whole process, this whole event, this whole thing about what I do, it's really about what I was born to do. And as I was explaining to him, like I inherited something, like I have a certain kind of genius that's going on here from the psychic side of my family that possessed me in fever form. See, when I was young, where I had to have the drums. The drums was it. All I wanted, I was obsessive about it. The drums were life for me. See, so for me, I mean, I could tell musicians, no, listen, you were playing all these other instruments, you got to go back to the drums. You got to make sure you paid your dues to the drums, so that you learn how to create time, not just through your melodies following time, but create time and get into the function of being a drummer. That's like earth, body to earth to solar system to the galaxy, to the universe. So this is important for people to get into the creative function of what being a drummer is about. So I started out as a drummer. Right, and that's how I ran into the Mongo Santa Maria people and all the rest. They heard me playing on the streets. I said, "What? This kid is playing up a storm." See, and that's because my pain and suffering was so intense that I had to do it that way. So, in terms of what I would have people remember about my work is that I've been true to my work. My work is to be here on the Earth planet as a certain kind of guide for peeps. Guide based upon my experience. My experience says no, always spirit. Spirit first, heart first. Everybody, listen to this. See. We don't have to have wars. There are forces that make it seem that we have to have wars because of the appearance of irreconcilable differences. So this is not political, this is international. But no, we don't really have to have wars. Put your hearts together for a change. Right? Not your swords together. That's easy to do. Put your hearts together. Make the sacrifice necessary to try and bring peace to our people. Care enough about your people to bring peace to them. If you care about your peeps, you care about your descendants, then you have to keep the peace. Right? Playing so flagrantly, so, let's say, selfishly, and so nonsensically, with violence and hostility. Yeah, that's the way of the world, the way of the beast, and the way of man. But that's not the way of spirit, really, is it? The way of peace is different. And this is what I'm saying, this has been my purpose, to play the music of silence, even though it has various forms, but it's really about silence, only silence. Because I don't want to harm anybody. There's no person, not like I'm chicken. No. I was a gangster when I was a kid because I had to survive. I was beaten to a pulp on the street and left bleeding by St. Peter's Church. I had to get up and fight for my life after that. But then after I realized the lesson, I had to get beyond that. Even though right after I went into the service and put in for Vietnam, but they wouldn't send me to Vietnam, which I wanted to go to, because they needed me, my radio, whatever it was, expertise or stuff in Europe. So that's why I went to Europe. I didn't go to Vietnam, then eventually I wound up in the band, as I mentioned him, and I was in heaven. And so this is basically what it is. People, you have to trust spirit. You have to go to the spirit. Do everything within your power to learn as much about spirit. And I don't mean church. Spirit is heart. It's here. Spirit is heart. Heart first. Your heart first. There's your church in your heart. It's not about outside. Outside is going to change. It's going to dissolve. Yeah, that's my message to the people. Heart first, and then along. The appearance of chaos is not chaos. Just like we could say a storm. When a hurricane hits, there's peace there. You can't read it because your eyes are in the physical, and you're so afraid of death. The creative force that's there. You're not in touch with God if you're afraid of death. Because there's only God, let's say, or spirit. There's only the light itself. Because everything is born of fire and goes back to fire. And then the fire leads to the light leads to the peace. So originally, to make a long story short, relative to the cosmic evolution, the evolution of the universe, peace first. It's already here, it's present. There's not a single person that hears it that doesn't feel peace when you give yourself a chance. See, because that's our true nature, it's peace, spirit, pure spirit. It's pure peace. See? You got to give that a chance as much as anything else. Like they say, give peace a chance. No, just give spirit a chance. Not just peace, because we're talking about peace relative to stress and warfare. No, we're not talking about that peace. See, that's not peace. That's some kind of agreement based upon political, conventional terms where they say, okay, we're going to be at peace until we see you do something. That's tit for tat. That's old school. See, that's barbarian. We need to bring out the conversation of transcendence and keep that alive so as that seeps out to the peeps. And this music, this crazy hot fire sound music, is about peace. Yes, chaos, because we're in a universe of chaos, so there's nothing wrong with that if it's coming from a place of letting people learn that there is peace. See, despite the conflict, there's peace. Everything is resolving into peace. Since everything would inevitably resolve into peace or death, let's get to peace right now and spare everybody the misery and the agony of having, and the frustration, the pain and anguish, the sorrow, see, having to go through it unnecessarily, you know. See, it's now, it's always now, it will never be anything other than now. See, it's always present. The Lord is present. The commercialization of music is necessary in the beginning. It's like education relative to music. It's the first stage. It's not the end stage. And we're not talking about the end stage relative to music, we're talking about the end stage relative to human evolution. See, because that's what's at risk here, is human evolution. And when we're talking about commercialism, yeah, that's a means to an end. See, it's a means. It's not the end. See, it's a means to an end. In this case, for the most part, people want to survive. They want to make themselves known so they have enough money. But none of that is happiness. In truth, not any of that's happiness. Because happiness is not because happiness is present, and we deny it, our joyful inheritance in the moment. See, and that's the truth of the matter. So we need to get back to spirit first, heart first, regarding the commercial industry, which is not bad. It's good. It's great. We're happy it's there. I'm not at odds with it because it serves a purpose. But it's, again, a means to an end. There's much more beyond it, and it's a big distraction for a lot of people who don't have a life. It's a huge distraction and misleading for a lot of people who don't have a life, because it's a make-believe world. The whole thing is a convention based upon a make-believe principle. They've made people believe they have to buy, and that they have to believe that these products are worth buying. And furthermore, they've convinced enough people to feel guilty if they don't. And that's a sin. See, that's a misappropriation of forces and reality given, that there has to be some compassion brought into it, or we're talking about a heartless society. Commercialism should not equal a heartless system, please.
On the flip side of the last thing you said, what are your comments relative to the non-commercialization of music? In other words, just distribute it free of charge.
Is this running? Yeah, so if we're talking about a happy medium, then there could be a happy medium to some degree. See, the idea is whether or not the individual is honorable enough and dignified enough to feel free at both ends of the spectrum. See, as an artist, all I need is air. See, as a native artist, all I need is air to breathe, I need water to drink, I don't need sex, I don't need that much food, so very little. As a yogi, I need very little. And you hear what I'm doing, there's a lot of music coming out, even when I'm hardly playing, which is the truth, and right now it's the way it is, for various reasons. The people who live with me know this more than anybody else. I'm given a lot, and so I really appreciate the fact that I can pull together a band like this, of very compatible people, compassionate people, people who feel this message, and they say, yeah, we're going to get behind you to do this. You know, and I feel that, you know, it's for them.
Yeah.
It's not for me. Yeah, the music today with George Koller, Bernie Senensky, and Greg Pilo. It's really a warm-up, you know, for things to come. And so it's not surprising that at the end of it, Bernie sincerely said, no, he felt really ready. He was ready to go, and that was at the end of it. And so it took that time to get to a place where there was, let's say, some embrace of the neutral consciousness that is timeless at the same time. So we got to timelessness. See, we got out of a so-called illusion of present time in terms of the karma and everything else that's going on. And we got to a point where we started to see the horizon. There was a larger, broader horizon after that. And that's why I'm happy Bernie said that, because that was the truth of the moment, that it took the band to transition from their ordinary sort of gig mind, work mind, to a deeper place where they started to see what we were talking about earlier, the super consciousness started to come through. So this gets easier and easier as we go along, which is true. Yeah, the mastery of music is a step in the right direction. See? the second right, right? It's not an endpoint. See, it's a let's say a step towards the infinite, and so it's important to keep the infinite in view, so that there's no holding back, there's no slowing down, and no freezing up in terms of self-imagery, let's say, development, or self-attainment, self-accomplishment. So there's no freezing up in the process. So nobody is just anything. We are just in the process of becoming more part of the infinite. Even though we would say we're musicians and guitar players, we're conductors, we're composers and all the rest of that, don't let anything freeze you up. You have to keep it wide open, see? So that your breathing is part of the conduction of the spiritual intelligence that is all pervasive, but not as easily recognized or accessible to most people, because they're settling for so much less. For the most part, people are actually being less than their considerations in terms of what they want to or need to become themselves. Okay? And so here we're saying, yeah, these considerations are good in order to get some momentum happening, get you at the right place at the right time. Then you got to forget about that and be wide open to what is possible. See, not just comfortable, but what is possible is more than comfortable. See, what is possible is very discomforting. Very uncomfortable. Infinite potential.